Welcome to the Explainer. So, the curtain is rising on the grand, often ruthless theater of history. Today, we're diving into three completely incredible stories of sheer brilliance, boundless ambition, and sudden shocking downfall. We're going to watch as people literally shape their own destinies, only to have fate completely rewrite the script on them. Think of this Explainer as a suspenseful three-act play. We'll follow historical figures who touch the absolute heights of human power and intellect, only to meet twists so dramatic you'd swear they were written for the stage. So go ahead and take your seats, because the curtain is going up.
Now you might be wondering, what do a naked mathematician, a ruthless captive, and a billionaire earl all have in common? On the surface, absolutely nothing. They lived centuries apart in totally different worlds. But as you'll see as these stories unfold, they actually share a profound, almost tragic connection. Every single one of them possessed this extraordinary power. Whether it was the power of the mind, the power of influence, or just unimaginable wealth, they controlled their worlds. And yet, each of them collided head-on with the sudden, unstoppable force of historical irony. Let's step back in time and meet our very first protagonist.
Act 1. The Betrayed Genius. Our story kicks off in ancient Syracuse with a man whose intellect was just unparalleled, Archimedes. He wasn't just smart, right? He was the smartest man in the ancient Mediterranean, a true genius whose mind operated on a completely different level than everyone else. But, even geniuses get stuck. He was given this seemingly impossible task by King Hero: figure out if a crown was made of pure gold, but without damaging it even a little bit. Archimedes was totally stumped. But then came one of the most famous moments in the history of science. Stepping into his bath, he noticed the water spilling over the edges, and suddenly it just clicked. He realized, wait a minute, I can measure the crown's volume just by submerging it and seeing exactly how much water it displaces. From there, calculating if it was real, dense gold was a piece of cake. He was so ridiculously excited by this physics-altering realization that he ran completely naked through the streets of Syracuse shouting, "Eureka!" which of course means, "I found it."
But this brilliant mind wasn't just solving little puzzle games for the king. He eventually became the ultimate weapon. When the mighty Roman army laid siege to the city, Archimedes turned his massive intellect to warfare. He built these incredible, terrifying war machines. And get this, for 3 grueling years, the single mathematician's inventions held the greatest military power on Earth completely at bay. The Romans were desperate. But finally, unfortunately for Syracuse, in the year 212 BCE, the Roman forces managed to break through the city's defenses. Now, the Roman command had given incredibly strict orders: capture this genius alive. He was just way too valuable to kill. But as we know, the theater of history can be incredibly cruel. Amidst all the chaos and destruction of the fallen city, Archimedes was just sitting quietly, drawing mathematical diagrams in the sand, completely lost in his own thoughts. An impatient Roman soldier approached him, aggressively demanding his attention. Archimedes didn't even look up. He simply uttered his cinematic final words: "Do not disturb my circles." Insulted and honestly just impatient, the soldier drew his sword and killed the greatest mind of the ancient world right then and there.
It really brutally illustrates the sheer tragic irony of the whole situation. What Rome desperately wanted was to recruit the brilliant mind that had tormented their massive army for 3 long years. They wanted his war machines, they wanted his genius. But what they got was a dead mathematician and a huge lost opportunity, all because of one impatient soldier who didn't recognize the value of the man drawing circles in the dirt. Fate, it seems, has absolutely zero respect for intellect.
Act 2. The Ambitious Slave. We're jumping forward in time now to the year 1520. In the opulent, extremely high-stakes world of the Ottoman Empire, our next protagonist begins as Alexandra, a young Ukrainian girl who was captured and sold into the Sultan's harem. Initially, she was literally just one slave among hundreds, a completely anonymous face in this massive imperial system. But she had something entirely unique. Renamed Roxelana, she used her extraordinary wit and beauty to do the absolute impossible. She caught the eye of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, who was arguably the most powerful man on earth at the time. And she didn't just catch his attention, she captivated him completely.
To really understand how crazy this is, you have to know that for 200 years, the Ottoman Empire operated on a strict, unbreakable, ancient tradition. Sultans never, ever married. They only kept concubines. This was a deliberate rule to make sure no single woman, or foreign family for that matter, ever gained too much power over the throne. But Roxelana completely shattered that reality. She actually convinced Suleiman to break 2 centuries of hard and fast tradition and make her his legal wife. Practically overnight, she went from being a nameless captive to a queen holding very real and very dangerous political power.
And once she had that power, wow, did she wield it. She moved with ruthless precision to protect her own bloodline. You see, she saw Suleiman's firstborn son Mustafa, who was born to another woman, as a massive direct threat to her own son's claim to the throne. So, like a master chess player, she maneuvered the political pieces and successfully orchestrated Mustafa's execution. With the rival totally removed, she secured the throne for her own son, Selim. But her ultimate masterstroke was changing the very fabric of Ottoman law itself, mandating that only sons of legal wives could actually inherit the throne.
But here is the crucial twist. We have to look at how this massive legal victory spectacularly backfired in the long run. By changing the law to favor legal wives, she effectively dismantled a system that had worked perfectly for centuries. Because of her, future sultans were born to concubines instead of being the product of powerful strategic political marriages, which eventually resulted in a lineage of much weaker rulers. Without ever intending to, one woman's fierce ambition to protect her son laid the exact groundwork that helped doom and weaken the entire empire for centuries to come. It was a brilliant tactical victory that ultimately resulted in a slow, tragic, strategic collapse.
Act 3. Maker of Kings.
Now we travel over to England to meet a man who wielded the raw, unadulterated power of immense wealth and political leverage, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick. For 20 incredible years, this single man controlled the English throne. He wasn't the king himself, but he made and broke kings at his absolute will. Famously known to history as the Kingmaker, Warwick was richer than royalty itself. In fact, his personal wealth actually exceeded the fortune of the king. And on top of all that money, he operated a massive spy network that stretched all across Europe. He was the ultimate puppet master, operating entirely behind the scenes. So in the year 1461, Warwick decided it was time for a change in management. He orchestrated the overthrow of the mad King Henry VI and placed a young Edward IV right on the throne. Now, to the rest of the world, Edward was the one wearing the crown, but everyone who actually walked the halls of power knew exactly who was pulling the strings. Warwick had successfully manufactured his very own king. But kings, as it turns out, really don't always like being puppets. Edward made a massive, fatal mistake. Warwick, ever the grand political strategist, had painstakingly arranged this perfect diplomatic marriage for Edward to secure vital foreign allies for England. But Edward completely went behind his kingmaker's back. He secretly married a commoner named Elizabeth Woodville, totally destroying Warwick's carefully laid diplomatic plans in an instant. Warwick's response? It was an absolute political earthquake. He was furious. He felt completely and utterly betrayed by the very man he had personally elevated to the throne. So, the man who made kings simply decided to unmake this one. In a truly breathtaking display of sheer power, Warwick completely flipped sides. He used his vast wealth and influence to restore the previously deposed, insane Henry VI right back to power, and he sent Edward fleeing into exile. The entire board was reset. But in the theater of history, pride almost always comes before a very literal fall. Edward wasn't quite finished yet. In 1471, he returned from exile with an army at his back. At the incredibly bloody Battle of Barnet, Richard Neville's reign as the ultimate puppet master came to a brutal end. He was killed on the battlefield by the forces of the very king he had originally created. The Kingmaker learned the ultimate fatal lesson: the man who makes kings can be unmade just as easily by his own creation.
Epilogue: The irony of fate. Over the course of this explainer, we've seen unparalleled genius slain by impatience, fierce ambition accidentally poison a legacy, and a brilliant puppet master violently destroyed by his own puppet.
So, it leaves us asking, who truly holds power in history? Is it the one who wears the crown, or is it the unpredictable fate that unseats them? Whether you wield the power of a mathematical genius, the relentless ambition of a queen, or the seemingly bottomless wealth of a kingmaker, there is always a twist waiting just off stage. History is a theater where no one, no matter how brilliant or ambitious, gets to write their own final act. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration, and always keep questioning the story behind the story.